Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whenever the fuck you're watching this. This is the Rosinbaggers podcast, brought to you by Backyard Sports. I've got Ty back with me. How you doing, man?
Dude, I'm doing well. As you can tell, I dressed in my Sunday best today. Here for the podcast. Looking forward to getting back into this swing of things. Literally on the baseball side of things. This past couple of weeks has been a whirlwind. I started my actual job 2 weeks ago, where we get back into the throes of radio high school sports, and that's been a blast. But excited to get baseball back and going. Quick shout out to the Nebraska Cornhusker volleyball women. They just picked up a huge win in 5 sets over Creighton. Screw you on FS1 for switching to, again, we're in a baseball podcast, and I'm saying screw you to FS1 for switching to baseball. But you can't switch mid-match. It's just awful.
Yeah.
Like, put the game on FS2. Anyways, Nebraska wins 15-9, 15,000 strong on a Wednesday afternoon in Omaha. Husker volleyball alive and well here in the capital of the Big Red.
Unbelievable. 15,000 on a
For
Wednesday
college volleyball.
for college volleyball. That's intensity. That's
Do it right.
amazing. That is
Do it
amazing. All right, well, let's jump into it. So last week, Stove and I, we had picked a couple of things to preview and looking at what is that? Okay. I got a little discombobulated there with where things were laid out. Stove's always so graceful with this stuff. I have to tip my cap again to him because he keeps this stuff flowing pretty smoothly. But I had picked Dodgers and Padres to preview last week, and as you can see, Sean Manaea does not look very pleased. And if you're a Padres fan, you had to feel really good because you come out the gates with a pretty decent statement win against your rival Dodgers, 7-1 in the first game of this series. Yu Darvish throws very, very well against Dustin May. And the Padres put a little hurting on the Dodgers to open the series, and you had to be thinking, oh, yeah, here we go. We're going to start building some momentum toward this stretch run. We're going to show that we made the moves at the deadline. We're a contender in the NL. We're a contender in the West. And then game 2 rolls around, and the man I just had up on the screen gets shelled to the tune of 8 earned over 4 1/3. And his ERA is like 700 against the Dodgers. They are his bugaboo. They are his kryptonite. He's a very, very good pitcher, just not against the Dodgers.
Negative 14 fantasy points against the Dodgers.
Oh,
I got negative 14.
That is so brutal.
Yeah.
Because Manaea's not a high volume strikeout guy to make up for giving up a bunch of earned runs. And I don't know how you make up for giving up 8 earned runs anyway. But yeah, and then of course in game 3 of this series, 9-4, the Dodgers put their thumb back on the Padres and say, Big Brother stumbled in game 1 of this series, but we're still here. We're still the big boys in this division. We're still the big boys in this pennant. Are the Dodgers beatable this year? Like early on, we said they might just win 150 games, and then they stumble kind of out the gates. Like it's almost like they were a little bit disinterested in the regular season for about half of the year. But since about the halfway mark going into the All-Star break, they've been ridiculous. And they just continue to absorb injuries. They continue to absorb poor play from guys like Cody Bellinger.
Yeah.
And they just continue to win games. Mookie Betts, I think people don't give him as much credit as he should get in terms of being considered one of the best players in all of baseball, because he's raking. He's maybe the biggest X factor on defense in the league. Like, his range is ridiculous and that throwing arm is absurd. This Dodgers team, for me, I don't see how anybody in the NL, short of maybe Atlanta, maybe the Mets, if they can kind of get things back together offensively, because they've got Max and Jacob deGrom. Max went on the IL. Maybe, they're playing really good ball right now, separating themselves in their division. This LA team looks pretty unstoppable, though. No?
This the National League race, I think over the weekend I kind of had it pinpointed to where I'm starting to do a little bit of projecting in terms of where these teams are going to fall into the playoffs. The Mad Max injury is huge for the New York Mets. That's big as we wind down towards the season because Atlanta, if you haven't been paying attention, the Braves have now caught the Mets. They are dead heat going in. They've got double headers going on. Currently locked into a dead heat in the National League East standings. So the loser takes the wild card spot. And when you, again, don't have a big arm like Mad Max at the stretch run of the season where you need to be playing playoff caliber baseball, to me, I think the Mets will slide into that wild card spot. One of their big things that they threw all of their eggs in the basket was their starting rotation. And without a big arm in that starting rotation, that lineup looks a little bit bleaker to me. So I've got the Mets right now is my fourth team in terms of power rankings in the National League. I think that's fair to say. St. Louis and Atlanta really neck and neck. I would give the slight edge to Atlanta because there's the been there, done that factor, and there's also the starting pitching that they continue to get from Strider, who just continues to throw lights out. And I think you can give him the ball in any scenario in the postseason, whether that be a guy that needs to go 7 innings to start a game, or whether that guy you just need a guy in the 6th to get out of a jam. I think he's going to be able to do that, and they're going to be able to utilize that. So I had the Braves as a slight edge over the Cardinals. The Dodgers are the front runner, but I think you can mix and match any of those 4 teams in there, and have a justifiable reason for doing so. Again, I'm very concerned with Scherzer's health for the long haul here. If you get him back for the postseason, he could pull a Jacob deGrom and just look like he never missed a day off. But that's, you're missing 15 games in the stretch run. That's going to be huge for New York moving forward, and it's a hell of a lot harder to work up the ladder than it is to be there as a division winner. So, yeah, New York, I think it's a 4. I think it's probably a 3-horse race with Atlanta, with St. Louis, and with LA. But you're right. When all the cylinders are clicking for the Dodgers, there isn't a feel-good Adam Wainwright, Yadier Molina, Pujols type story to overcome the mountain that is LA right now in the National League when all cylinders are clicking. But it's the game of baseball, and funny shit happens all the time in the game of baseball. And all of a sudden you could lay an egg and hit a rough patch, and in 3 games be down 2-1, be down 3-1, and be playing for your playoff lives. So yeah, I think it's a 3-horse race. I think, if I'm a betting man, which I am, I would toss some dollars on the Dodgers, but I don't think it's going to win you a whole lot in Vegas. I think they're like minus 175 right now to win the National League pennant. So LA is the front runner. And, we kept waiting for San Diego. I think ultimately the death blow for San Diego happened on my very last episode on this pod, was the Fernando Tatis suspension, was the PEDs. I think they needed to get him back in that lineup to make a legitimate threat at this. I think Philly's a stronger team than San Diego from head to tail in terms of pitching rotation and in terms of the pop they have in the lineup. And ultimately, at this point, where it stands right now, I don't see San Diego getting into that wild card spot over Philly. I just don't.
Yeah. They're in a tough spot right now, and you can see they're down against Arizona early tonight, and they've been losing to teams like Arizona. They've been losing games they shouldn't be losing. If they're going to be the team that they think they want to be, and you're right, that Tatis news, and it has to reverberate in that locker room too, right? Like that had to be something they could hang on to. He's coming back. We're going to get him back. MVP caliber guy. He's not coming back. And this is the squad they have, and this is where, they need guys to step up, and they just haven't been getting that. Soto's even been in a little bit of a funk. He got booed the other night and said, wow, this is something I never experienced in Washington. And, that's when you have a team that you're expecting to be a playoff contender and potentially make a long, deep run, you're going to get booed when you're losing games. I look at, in the in the grand scheme of things, the Mets are probably a one and done team if they don't have the ability to roll out Max and Jacob in a series. They may get a win in that wild card game and get into a series, but they can't win a series without Max. Honestly, they have to, because that's what you hang your hat on. If you've got Max and DeGrom, that's what you hang your hat on. I can roll the ball out to them 3 times in a 5-game series or 4 times in a 7-game series, and we're gonna win 3 or 4 games, even if it goes 5 or 7. So tough blow for them. But with this Padres team too, just it doesn't look great after all the moves at the deadline. So, but all right, let's shift gears to preview for this week. We've got a couple of really good matchups to take a look at. Ty, you want to look at Red Sox and Orioles here? The Orioles, who still they haven't stopped winning games. They may not get into a playoff spot because of how contentious it is in the AL, especially in the AL East. But this is a team that we were talking 5 years, right? Was that window? That window, I think, has shortened, and the sustained winning this season has to be an indicator of that. What do you think for this series?
I circled this series. I know we've talked about Baltimore ad nauseum essentially on this podcast because they have been one of the big storylines in 2022 in what has been the Major League Baseball season, with just how far they've come in how little amount of time they had to turn it around. Baltimore is an amazing story, but I've got this series circled because I think this is an absolute must win for Baltimore in terms of being a playoff contender, in terms of sneaking into that wild card spot. The teams in front of them are playing some damn good baseball right now and appear to have no signs of slowing down. You have a Toronto team that over Labor Day weekend, just absolutely went bonkers with their offense. Bo Bichette with 3 home runs. Vladimir Guerrero continues to do impressive things with the bat, but he's also showing off the glove. He had a little backhanded flip today that just left me speechless. I didn't think the big boy had those kind of moves over there on the bag. Toronto is playing like a team that's showing no signs of slowing down. I think if any team, Seattle slides into that third wild card spot and gets into a little bit of a race with Baltimore towards the end of the season, which would be a sexy race for a wild card spot because they're two teams that it's hard not to cheer for a team like Seattle and Julio Rodriguez and all the guys that they brought in, essentially the 2021 version of the Cincinnati Reds, getting Winkler and Eugenio Suarez in there and Eugenio swinging the bat well. But I look at this, if you drop 2 games to the Boston Red Sox, and all of a sudden you're looking at 5.5 games back here with a month to go before the playoffs begin, before the end of the regular season, 5.5 is starting to be a little bit of a bleak climb. I think at this point in the season, it's going to be tough. The only team that's really kind of reversed course and flipped the script so quickly have been my St. Louis Cardinals, where 2 months ago, they were sitting 5.5 games back from Milwaukee, and now they're clear, winning 8 of their last 10 games, clear out in front of the National League Central, and Milwaukee just continues to slide. They had a horrible series against Arizona out of nowhere, and Milwaukee appears to be packing it in. But again, for Baltimore, I love this series in the fact that, I think it's a winnable series for them, because Boston has been so off and on. Their offense never did click. And we waited the entire year for Boston's offense to put it together, and it just never happened. So you're facing a team that is 3 games under 500, that is probably putting the finishing touches, getting ready to go into their October vacation mode. And you got a Baltimore team that's fighting for their playoff lives in an AL East rivalry with Baltimore and Boston. And you know how sexy those teams are when you get together for divisional matchups. Baltimore is going to come in, I think, with just a lot more on the line, playing playoff baseball in September. And I just will be curious if they can take 2 of 3. And if Seattle falters somewhere down the line, and all of a sudden it's maybe 1-2 games out in that final AL wildcard spot, and we have a race. We have a sexy race between the Mariners and the Orioles to see who can get into that last wildcard spot. That's going to be a fun fun finish. But the Baltimore story has been absolutely fantastic. Their starting pitching, it's not sexy, but it's stable. It's guys that take the ball and get you innings. Their bullpen has just done incredible work, despite the fact that they traded off their closer at the trade deadline. Um, I'm all in on this Baltimore train right now, and I really do want to see the storybook ending to what has been an incredible chapter in baseball history, which is Baltimore. Again, a team that at the very beginning of the season, you're talking total rebuild mode, call up your prospects, get a little enthusiasm into the fan base, but you didn't expect them to do anything. You didn't expect them to go anywhere. And here we are in September 7th, 3.5 out from Toronto, 4.5 out from Seattle. They can close that gap. They have a huge opportunity. And for my money, despite the fact that there's a lot of good series going on this weekend, my eyeballs are going to be on Baltimore-Boston.
Yeah, absolutely. This is as you put it, a must win, a must have. You've got to get 2, if not 3, honestly, from this series, because you're playing Toronto tonight. If you drop a game, they're behind right now 4-1. If they end up dropping this game, if that score holds, the series I'm highlighting is another wild card team in Seattle, right? Who's, you just said, 4.5 ahead of them, and they're facing the Braves this weekend. So you have to look at it as, you have to look at it as an opportunity if you're Baltimore to say, hey, if Atlanta can help us, beat up Seattle a little bit this weekend, right? My dad's Braves helping out the Orioles, helping themselves out in their own playoff standings. Baltimore suddenly could close that gap to 2.5, maybe 1.5 in the most optimal scenario. You can close that gap with Seattle down to 2 or 3 games here, and then all bets are off going into the final 3 or so weeks of the season here, with Baltimore potentially chasing playoffs. So I'm going to flip the script just a little bit and talk about what Seattle has to do in order to avoid that scenario with Atlanta, because they're facing Morton and Fried to start this series. Morton, a guy who's just the craftiest dude in the league, has probably the most movement of any pitcher in the league, throws like 9 different variations of his own fastball and curveball. And then, of course, Max Fried, who coming into this season was the workhorse of this rotation, who was the ace of this rotation. Now, you just mentioned Spencer Strider a moment ago, who has asserted himself as a rookie who might just be the ace of a staff. The way he can just punch guys out, it's wild what he can do. But Atlanta has Morton and Fried to start this series. They're in their own pennant race. They're in the NL East. This is going to be a really contentious series. I'm excited to see the energy, the enthusiasm of Seattle against the proven veterans in Atlanta, right? And of course, Atlanta's still young, relatively young in the grand scheme of things, but Atlanta's, as you put it, been there, done that. Seattle, the upstart here, with obviously the AL Rookie of the Year in Julio Rodriguez. They've had a really big improvement in their pitching staff this year, which looked a little rocky to start the season. This is a huge series in both the AL and the NL standings, in division pennants, but also in the wild card standings, because Baltimore's chasing Seattle, breathing right down their neck here, and this could potentially be the weekend that Atlanta could get that separation from the Mets as well. The Mets, it looks like they're going to take both their games here in the doubleheader today against the Pirates, but Atlanta won their game against Oakland today. Going into this series, this weekend, it's going to be something that both the AL and the NL could be impacted pretty greatly by this series here with Atlanta and Seattle.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun at this particular time of the year during baseball season, and unfortunately, it just gets lost in the shuffle that is kickoff. NFL season kicks off, college football season kicks off, and we kind of get lost in it until we get towards game 163 and everything's on the line. But you have a couple sexy playoff races still to be determined. That AL wildcard spot is far from being done and dusted. That National League wildcard spot with Philadelphia and San Diego is going to go down to the wire. But to me, even though it's Philly and San Diego, the sexier race right now is definitely Seattle, Toronto, Baltimore, that American League. You've got the power lineup that Toronto put together to make a playoff push to be essentially a World Series contending push over in Toronto. You had Seattle with the call up. You had Baltimore with the call up of Adley Rutschman. Seattle with the call up of Julio Rodriguez, and these young bloods that have been injected into these franchises that have been so desperate for a winner. And I think the American League holds a lot more weight for me because of the patience that these fan bases have had to endure to have winning teams, to have potentially playoff teams. Seattle and Baltimore to be fighting it out in mid-September, well into early October for a potential berth in the American League playoffs is just such a great story. So following this one intently, it's going to be a good weekend of baseball. It might honestly be stuff where you got to split screen it. You got a great matchup that you had picked with Seattle and Atlanta, and if you hadn't picked that one, I might have picked that one. I defaulted to Baltimore and Boston because it's right there. There's a lot to be determined. There's a lot of ground to be made. But again, for Baltimore's sake, you can fall out of it just as quickly as you can climb into it here this weekend with a rough patch against Boston.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned races, and we didn't highlight them at all. But what's going to happen in the New York media if that lead in the AL East gets down to 1 or 2? It was like 17, like a month ago.
Yeah.
And they continue to just not play very good baseball. And I still don't understand why pitchers are pitching to Aaron Judge, because nobody else in that lineup's hitting. You put up 4 fingers and you move on to the next guy. I don't get it. They just keep pitching to the guy.
Yeah, I guess you want your name going down in record books, with every single home run that he hits, the pitcher's name is attached to it, and maybe that's got some kind of draw because they continue to throw to him. Nobody else in that New York Yankees lineup is hitting. From the New York media perspective, it's a dose of Yankee reality because this has been so common for them over the past couple of years to start popping the champagne corks, if you will, before the dust has been settled. And God, it was only a couple months ago, and it seems like just a couple weeks ago. These podcasts just mesh together and fly by, as does the baseball season. But remember when we were talking about the Yankees potentially breaking the all-time record for most wins, and now we're questioning or not whether Tampa or Toronto is going to be able to catch them, and they've got a legitimate shot. Toronto and Tampa are 4 games clear of 500 in their last 10 games, and continuing to play great baseball. Tampa is maybe the most solid, all-around put-together team of them all. Out of anybody in the American League. Toronto's got the bats to make a push at this, and now we're questioning or not whether the Yankees are going to be able to hang on or whether the wheels are going to fall off the bus before they even get to the postseason. And it's a very legitimate question. What happens in the New York media where they were expecting a potential Subway Series World Series, and now you have 2 teams that crumble late? Max Scherzer's injury, again, I think is going to be huge for the Mets moving forward. And if the Yankees can't find the genie in the bottle, so to speak, on the offensive end, if they can't get the bats going, it might be the quickest Yankee exit with arguably one of the most potent lineups that just in the middle of August forgot how to hit and never picked the bats back up. It's bizarre, and I'm here for it. I love it.
Absolutely. I mean, they had to come from behind twice today in game 1 of the series against the Twins, and they're down again in game 2 of the doubleheader against the Twins. So those wheels they're clinking and clanging, and those lug nuts are about to fall off.
And let me grab out my world's smallest violin for all the Yankee fans out there, because I sympathize so greatly with you when as you sit there and brag from the mountains when your team is doing well, and then slam on the panic button when the first sign of trouble arrives. And there's a lot of signs of trouble arriving, and they're slamming on every panic button they can press, and it's not doing anything for them. Again, I look at New York, and you got to think, you gave a guy that's had a sub 0.1 8 ERA you gave him to St. Louis for an injured player.
Yeah.
Harrison Bader still hasn't seen the field in pinstripes. He's been hurt. You gave us Montgomery, and he's done absolutely nothing but take the ball, get you 7 innings, and oh, by the way, all St. Louis has to do is score 1 when he's on the mound because he's probably throwing 7 innings of shutout baseball. You quit on Joey Gallo. Joey Gallo didn't quit on you. You quit on Gallo. You shipped him off to L.A. for pennies, and this is what you get. Yep. A bizarre trade deadline where they didn't really add, they just gave. And I think you're clearly seeing what it's doing to the lineup. And, again, you can sit there and you can mathematically look at the numbers and analytically analyze all this and say the Gallo move was great for New York. But from my perspective, and maybe yours as well, as guys that grew up around baseball, there are certain pieces to a puzzle. And to me, Joey Gallo was always a clubhouse guy. Yeah. He was a clubhouse guy that was great for morale, that was first to crack a joke, that was the first to get you out of your slump. If you were having a rock and a hard place, he was going to be there as a supportive teammate.
Yeah.
And for New York to ship him off without hesitation, without question, I think it did more damage to the morale of that clubhouse than it did good. And I think you're still seeing the lingering effects. They have not been able to put it together since the deadline. And, I think they pissed in their own soup and then drank it. I have, again, world's smallest violin, very little remorse for the New York Yankees at this point in their catastrophic season.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, Joey Gallo's been hitting pretty well for the Dodgers too since they shipped him off. So kind of double dipped the pain there for the Yankees fans. All right, let's get to our salute to service before we finish up with State of the Union. All right, tonight's episode goes out to Specialist Michael T. Osario. He died April 23rd, 2019, serving during Operation Inherent Resolve. At the time of his death, he was 20 years old. He was from Horseshoe Bend, Idaho, and he died in Taji, Iraq. He was an intelligence analyst. He was in the 3rd Armored Brigade, part of the 4th Infantry Division out of Fort Carson. He was decorated with the Army Commendation Medal, Army Achievement Medal, National Defense Service Medal, Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, and Army Service Ribbon. Specialist Osario, we have the watch. All right, finish up with our State of the Union. All right, yeah, I like it. Ty, I'm gonna jump in here and then I'm gonna get the fuck out of the way because your State of the Union is big time. But I wanna kind of refresh everybody's memory of maybe the most complete prospect that we've seen in a very, very long time. Bobby Witt Jr., who struggled for a good portion of this season, has gotten really hot over the last 6 weeks, is raking, is playing incredible defense. It seems like on a nightly basis now we're seeing some sort of savvy play from this guy who's like 9 years old, playing at the highest level of baseball, stealing bases. He's got 20 dingers, leads his team in dingers. He's got 26 stolen bases. So you're seeing all 5 tools from this guy. Knocked in 75 or more runs so far this season on a really, really, really bad, underperforming Kansas City Royals team. They've got no pitching. They don't have a ton of support around him. Salvi's having a down season after hitting almost 50 bombs last year. Bobby Witt Jr., remember that name because I thought he was going to win AL Rookie of the Year this year. It's not going to happen, but I do believe in his future there's an MVP trophy with his name on it. And he's going to be part of contending teams. I don't know if it's going to be in Kansas City, if they're going to be able to rebuild that pitching staff in time to capitalize on his team-controlled years. But Bobby Witt Jr., the stock is back on the rise after a little bit of a struggle to start the season. Over the last 6 weeks, he's been one of the best players, overall players in baseball, especially one of the best young players in baseball. He's not going to win the Rookie of the Year. Julio Rodriguez has run away with that, and there's no question that Julio is going to win that award. But Bobby Witt, it seems, has started to figure the game out. The game seems to be slowing down a bit for him, and he looks like a guy who's going to be able to potentially put a roster on his back and carry a team to some success here in the major leagues. All right, Ty.
Let's do this.
Bud. Talk to me, bud.
Let's do this. Shohei Ohtani, the biggest player in baseball, to me, still the face of Major League Baseball, and a face where the hourglass appears to maybe be running out. There have been so many mixed reports. I think over the trade deadline, the biggest disappointment for all baseball fans was that Ohtani didn't land somewhere on a contender so that we got to watch postseason baseball with this phenomenal two-way athlete who has pitched lights out, who has hit and crushed. Shohei Ohtani has just been, again, the spectacle surrounding the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim, who are a team in pitiful parts at this point. So the State of the Union for me is taking a look at what's going to be 2023 for Shohei Ohtani. And I think that conversation starts to have and has to happen now. You taking a look and listening within the Angels camps, they're intent on keeping their future star. They are intent on maintaining him and his status with the Angels, but they're going to have to pony up some serious dough and also get some serious help around Shohei Ohtani. And I don't think LA's got it. I don't think they have the pieces of the puzzle to put it all together. And so I just think that this is going to ultimately be a series where we have a big market and a big name in free agency here in 2023. The Angels, again, approached him about a contract extension, probably starting with an annual salary of around $50 million. That, according to Buster Olney on ESPN this past Friday. Again, the electrifying combination of hitting and pitching. But
on that note, just check, like, for context for those out there that aren't quite aware. Like, look, this is the Angels team leaders. There's one person.
Yeah. Absolutely incredible. And so I guess what I would want to do here on this State of the Union is start to put our minds into other GMs, start to see, okay, what team is on the slide right now that needs an extra bat, that has a potential to be a playoff push and has a potential to be a contender for multiple years to come. And one of those teams that just jumps out at me, that's got the payroll for it, that can make the splash, that I still think should have been a contender this year, that will likely have a new boss in 2023 and a clean house. I see him going to the south side of Chicago. I really do. I think that's a sexy landing spot for him. I think they've got pieces in that, or they got a place for him certainly in that rotation. They've got a place for him with the bat. I could also see Boston being a very likely landing spot. A name like Boston, or a baseball town like Boston, a name like Shohei Ohtani. But I've just got to say that despite everything that LA that they're going to do, that they're going to try to do, that they're going to throw out, and they'll throw out massive numbers, the State of the Union for Shohei Ohtani is just to not take the money. You know, from the baseball fan perspective, it would be very disheartening for me to see a guy take the contract and take the cash and continuing to see his career just dissolve into nothing fancy. As of right now, despite all of the great things that Shohei Ohtani has done, despite the records that he continues to break and the barriers that he continues to set new bars towards for other baseball players in the future, I don't have him anywhere close to being a mention on a Hall of Fame ballot because there's no postseason accolades. There's no run. There's no doing it when it's special. You've done it on a minor league baseball team, essentially in Anaheim, and it would have been great had Trout been able to stay healthy for half a dozen games. But his injury status has put this in jeopardy. Shohei has proven time and time and again that he can be a one-man show. And you look at you flashed up the statistics and what he's been able to do as a team leader. His WAR rating, they've won 60 games this year, and I think his WAR rating is plus 60. I don't know how many games that the Anaheim Angels win without Shohei Ohtani. I just really, really want to see him move on from the Angels. Normally, I'm the kind of guy, I'm a little bit old school. I love seeing guys that get drafted by an organization stay within that organization. All be a Freddie Freeman in Atlanta, be an Adam Wainwright in St. Louis, a Yadier Molina. You loved the comeback story with Albert Pujols, but I don't see it in 2023, and it's kind of been the big story on ESPN. In terms of baseball, they keep bringing up Shohei Ohtani because he's the attraction, he's the show, and the big news again coming out here on September 1st on ESPN's Get Up was the Buster Olney report, and the long-term future with the Angels. He's under contract through 2023. He's arbitration eligible this offseason, and Buster reported that he just does not see Shohei Ohtani staying put with the Angels past this season. I think it would be great for baseball to see him on a contender. I would think it would be great for baseball to see him on a historic franchise. Again, like a Boston, like a Chicago, get him in the huge baseball markets, the huge baseball fan bases, and then continue to see what has already been a great stellar career only blossom. And it's only going to get better, but you got to get the hell out of Anaheim. So I'm pleading, whatever the Angels can throw at you, they're going to have to throw money and they're going to have to throw help. And I don't think they can do both. I'm pleading with Shohei to get yourself out of Anaheim, get yourself on a winner, and do it for the good of all baseball.
For sure. So, quick aside, right? I don't know that they have the prospects to be able to go get him, but I'm salivating a little bit, and I hate to do this because I despise this team. But could you imagine Shohei in New York with that short porch in right field? If they don't pay Judge, they're definitely, they could have the payroll even with Judge on the roster, but Shohei with that short porch, the big lights of New York, historic franchise, team that wants to win and doesn't do it the way that the Angels are. The Angels just seem to have always kind of stepped on their own feet. I don't love the idea of him being in the Bronx because, like I said, I absolutely despise. I hate the Yankees maybe more than I hate the Cowboys, which is a strong statement. Do you think there's any validity to the possibility? Because at the deadline, the Yankees were in the conversation, but I just don't think that they've got the prospects to really pry him away from LA. Any chance?
I don't think they've got the prospects. I think they've got the cash considerations to do so. I also, as long as we're on the subject of the Bronx and tenures coming to a close at certain organizations, I can't see Giancarlo Stanton hanging around New York after this year. The poor guy just can't stay healthy long enough to be a long-term viable solution for an organization. So you unload him, you have cash considerations available. New York doesn't care what those cash considerations are. They're a never-ending bank. And from the New York market perspective, I think it's great. I think it's constantly can't miss primetime TV, especially because like the reason I put the Angels in way back in April in our preseason contention was because I wanted to see Trout and I wanted to see Shohei and I wanted to see them hit 3-4. And
Yeah.
wouldn't it be something to see Shohei and Judge
Yeah.
hit 3-4 in a lineup? That's
Yeah.
sexy, whether you're a Yankees fan or whether you loathe the Yankees like we both do.
Yeah.
You still have to watch. You still have to grab the popcorn out when that happens. I think there's a lot of validity to the Yankees. I think there's again, I said it right off the bat. I would be very shocked to see if Chicago doesn't completely clean house and make some moves, whether or not the Chicago White Sox on the south side are sexy enough to lure Shohei away. Maybe we're still sticking in the American League East bias with and why is it always Boston and New York that seems to get these big stars? But every time the turnaround, and you have big stars available in the free agent pool, Boston and New York seem to make the biggest splashes.
Yeah.
I don't think the Dodgers have room. And I'm just gonna be honest. If LA wants to keep their core intact, they're not gonna have any room for Shohei Ohtani. So yeah, the Yankees would be a landing spot. I thought that they were going to maybe make a move at the trade deadline. He ended up staying put, and again, upsetting the baseball universe for not getting on a contender. I think Boston's right there because I think Boston's going to have a lot of soul searching to do in the offseason. But in terms of it's a little bit of a double-edged sword here because I hate to see the fact that it came to a close the way it came to a close in Anaheim for Shohei Ohtani, but yet I'm super excited for what the future holds for this baseball player, this young star that's going to have essentially a rebirth and get an opportunity to show what he can do on a contender. That's got me super excited. Yeah, I would love, again, puke a little bit in my mouth when I say this. I would love to see him on a New York franchise in the spotlight.
Yeah, for sure. It's the market he deserves. It's the market baseball fans deserve, right? It's Chicago, it's Boston, it's New York, it's LA, but not the Angels, right? Like
right.
they aren't worthy of the superstars that they have. You know, it's been a miserable time watching Trout, you know, be the best player in baseball for a decade and not play on a winning team.
Has it been the Shohei story? I think when we take a look at the 2022 season in a capsule, to me, the saddest story was the Shohei story because I think there was so much hype that has really been built up over the course of the last 2 years on an underwhelming franchise that continues to be underwhelming. To me, the saddest story this season was Shohei, but it's got the potential to have the happiest ending.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Any closing remarks? Anything you want to bring out for us?
You know, my perspective is I'm, first of all, super excited to get back into the swing of baseball again. I got to be honest, over the last 14 days, my ability to watch anything other than Cardinals score alerts on Twitter has essentially been the extent of my baseball knowledge. Maybe that came out a little bit here on this pod. Maybe it didn't. Still trying to keep up for the purposes of, and we're going to close out strong because now my Wednesdays are all freed up again. So I'm super excited about that. And things are going to start to slow down as we just get into kind of football Fridays and volleyball and softball take a little bit of a backseat on the high school sports front. But like I said, just super excited to get back into the swing of things here. And when we've got meaningful races that are going on in September, we have, again, playoff caliber baseball matchups that are going to be happening on a weekly basis, if not a daily basis. There is going to be something for baseball fans to enjoy. There are storylines for baseball fans to enjoy. And for the neutrals, we have maybe the most incredible culmination of seasons and statistics that we have had since the 1998 season. And to me, that is Albert chasing 700. That is Aaron Judge continuing to chase down Yankee records and continuing to hit long balls. What did Albert do? What did Judge do? What did Albert do? What did Judge? It has that feel of a very nostalgic summer of 1998 where you watched SportsCenter every single morning to find out whether or not Sosa or Mark McGwire hit another home run. And you did it every single day from about July 1st on. And now with these two milestones being chased down by one of the game's greatest players to ever play it, and one that arguably will ever play it in Aaron Judge, you have milestone watches that are bringing out the casual fans. They know the storylines heading in. If you get an opportunity, I know I'm heavy on the Cardinals for obvious reasons here on the pod, but I would definitely check out Adam Wainwright's heartfelt goodbye to Yadier Molina. He did a little documentary on all of the hard work that Yadi has put in over the course of his career. As his career heads towards a hopefully post-season close, it would be the perfect way to cap it off. And I remember saying at the very beginning of the podcast that I don't care if the Cardinals win one game. I'm excited to see Albert, Yadi, and Waino get to do it one more time. And now it looks like we're going to see them do it a couple more times in the postseason. And so that's exciting to me. But the milestone watches are bringing out the casual fans. The playoff races are certainly something to salivate for any baseball fan. And it's only September 7th, and we're going to go into early November here in the baseball season before we crown a World Series champion. And for my money, I don't have a solid pick. I can't put $100 bill on somebody and say World Series champ. I got 3 teams in the National League that I think could arguably do it. I've got 2 or 3 teams in the American League that I think are going to be right there in the mix. I think there's still a lot to play for. There's still a lot to be decided. And you cross your fingers and you hope for no more injuries. Like I said, the Scherzer injury was a huge blow to New York, and it's a huge blow to baseball because that just lowers the quality that you get down the stretch. You hope these teams can stay healthy, make a good postseason push, and make this a really, really memorable season. The wild card races are always sexy. It's going to go down, I think, to the last week of the season in both the American League and National League, and we haven't seen that since maybe 2014 when we went to a game 163. So there's a lot of good things going on in the sport of baseball right now. I'm excited to be able to finally get back and catch up a little bit. I've got certainly plenty of catch up to do, but it's great to be back on the podcast. It's great to be talking baseball again because, like I say, anytime you're talking baseball, it's better than your best day not talking baseball. So it's great to be back with you, Gary. Excited to get Stove back on here and get the 3-man crew rolling again as we get into the meat, to the heart here of the season.
Oh yeah, postseason, the feeling is in the air. The chase is on. These pennant races are going to be great to watch down the stretch. Milestone chases. Glad to have you back. You came back at the right time. For Ty, for Big Stove, who couldn't be here tonight, I'm Gary. This has been Rosinbaggers. We are